Come on.
Hello everyone and welcome to a special edition of the Franchise Tag. We are here today in Passyunk Avenue here in Battersea, my favourite place to eat on game day while in London. And so obviously we are here and we're here to talk about American football once again. I'm joined today by Sky Pank, roaming reporter I would say here in the London games.
Yeah.
We'll go with that. So Sky, week 2 of the games here in London. You were at the game last week between the Jets and the Vikings. How was that?
Great atmosphere, to be fair. I know mentioned on the Monday show about that comparison with Bills and the Vikings and how they travelled. I think the Vikings travelled really well. Obviously, we had Jared Allen doing the skull. It was great atmosphere. A sea of purple, and they got the result they wanted as well. So as much as New York travelled well as well, I think the Vikings, they definitely turned up more and they got the result. Maybe that played a factor in it as well.
It did, and obviously the thunderclap as well was quite good to see in the stadium, and you could just see that the energy that generated teams. I think they kind of needed that energy, because it looked like that the Jets were gonna come back and win that game. How clutch is that defense over in Minnesota at the moment?
I know. I love that Brian Flores is getting his flowers, as people say nowadays, right? Like to design those different schemes, packages, especially to throw them at a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who's been in the league for so long. I think there was, look at the banking, cool pick six. That was a blitz bluff. He's dropped back, got that. So, I think Flores really demonstrated, at this point in the season, depending on who you played, I think people are always quite quick to criticise and say, oh, well, who have you actually played? But the Jets have so many playmakers. They stuffed the run against Brees Hall game. And like you said, in that final drive, they come up big. And my mate, Fulton Gilmore, got the pick as well. So that was nice.
Obviously, former Patriots and a guy that's always going to be number one in your heart, I would say. But obviously that game as well, there was a game that looked early on like it was going to be very one-sided. And was it 17-0 at one point? When you got a Warrior blowout, how impressed were you with what the Jets were able to do to come back into that game?
Yeah, I think especially it started raining in the second half. Those conditions don't favour a team to come back, and we saw a few difficult decisions with Darnold throwing a rape here. Rodgers had done it as well, but I think again it was mainly the Jets defense that stepped up, and we don't go into the intricacies of Robert Saleh being fired. We'll cover that on Monday, but I think it was more Rodgers leading the offense, the defense stepped up, and I think the Jets' issue still comes down to Nathaniel Hackett and those play calling, and maybe with a different play caller, they might have won that game.
How is he still there?
I don't know.
Like Robert Saleh, obviously, has been almost
get a DC job tomorrow.
Yeah. He's more or less been used as like a scapegoat for what's going on, and just seems to be over there that this Aaron Rodgers and Hackett thing, and it's like, how has that been allowed to? Because he's not the one calling the offensive plays, really. Salah, he's not involved in that.
I don't want to be the guy to say that Rodgers got Salah fired. He's been quick to dismiss that on McAfee. I don't think anyone should speculate on that. But I don't know why Hackett's in the job. That's definitely a friend thing.
And it's been a recurring thing because obviously Hackett has struggled in his last few jobs.
Denver wasn't great.
Exactly. Obviously, Denver, he was horrific, and then obviously came in. The reason he got brought in was obviously to make Aaron Rodgers feel at home. But it really just doesn't look like it's worked at all for how the offense is run. What do they need to do moving forward in New York, in your opinion?
When you promote a DC, I guess that's almost like in a way of saying, well, I kind of asked Rodgers in the press conference, but I know he got asked a question in 2016 about why he doesn't make adjustments, why he doesn't pick his own plays. I think he was quite nitpicky and saying, well, no quarterback picks his own plays. But that's because you're Peyton Manning's, you're Tom Brady's. They pick the plays before they go into the huddle, and then they make adjustments at the line of scrimmage, and then they call audibles. So I don't know if Rodgers is still a bit, he can do that.
Yeah, he is.
He's a 4-time MVP?
Yeah.
He can do that. So that's what I think the Jets need to do to succeed, is they need to let him almost have free reign, which sounds a bit counterproductive. But if Salah's gone, the offense is his now. You have the DC there who's now been promoted to head coach. I don't think they'll hire anyone in the interim. We spoke off air, but it won't be Bill Belichick. Could be a Vrabel, who you want at the Eagles.
Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, we've still got our head coach at the moment, so we can't put someone else in.
He hasn't got a password here. There's no Nick Sirianni and people.
No, there's no Sirianni, the legend. Do you know what I mean? For the password to here. But yeah, it's just head coach wise, it just felt an odd thing, and I don't get why. I know obviously Aaron Rodgers is the guy that paid a lot of money for Aaron Rodgers, but he's not the guy long-term future of that franchise. So it almost feels like they've chose an aging quarterback over,
he's probably got one more year max.
Yes, over a really good defensive-minded coach, which I know at this day and age, defensive-minded coaches, head coaches particularly, don't seem to thrive in the NFL these days. So, obviously, what is the future going to be like for Robert Saleh moving forward, do you think?
I remember saying on Monday that I think it would be a Patriots situation. You know, when like Josh McDaniels would not do well in his own gig. I know we laugh about it, but
Several times.
But Belichick would say, "Oh, hey mate, there's a gig for you upstairs this season."
Yeah,
I think Robert Saleh should go back to the 49ers in some capacity and sort of rebuild yourself under Shanahan, or take the year off, and there'll be plenty of teams calling next year for a DC job. I don't want to speculate any coordinators, but in terms of like players, you'd look at Detroit Lions and go, you got your Aiden Hutchinson's there, even you guys. I mean, I know there's Fangio at the moment.
He's doing all right,
but you know, he's an aging guy. Or Robert Saleh, who's thriving, you might go with the playmakers you've got. That could work out. If Brian Flores got a coaching gig as a head coach, again, because he will be in the running for what he's doing with the Vikings at reset, then you bring a guy like Robert Saleh in there and maybe it works for him.
And obviously, you mentioned Brian Flores there. Now, we had a discussion off air beforehand about how good it is seeing him get his props. How pleased are you what he has done so far this season with that defense of not necessarily household names? It's not a team which the defense you look at and go, when you think about obviously back to like the Ravens back in the day or something, it's not a team like that. But that defense is stepping up week in, week out.
I know.
How good is Brian Flores showing he is this season?
I wasn't admittedly impressed until they beat the Texans.
Yeah.
In the manner that they did. And I was like, okay, he's clearly got something going here. Like you said, they're not household names. I wouldn't sit there and go through the list of them, but like anyone for like any avid NFL fan, even looking through, would be like, oh, like who are these guys?
Yeah.
Obviously, there was in the off season when Daniel Hunter went over to Houston.
Yeah.
And then Green had come in. They've done the reverse, and everyone on paper was kind of like, will that work out? Because Hunter arguably was probably the bigger name.
Yes.
But Green had been good this season. Yeah. Mentioned about Van Ginkel. He had a pick six, I think, earlier in the year, and he's got one this week. So, look, I'm not saying it's a Patriots thing, but when you've been in that building under Bill Belichick, it's almost like a collective as opposed to individuals. And he's brought that to Minnesota.
I don't mind, basically. Yeah. And obviously, the defense, obviously, what I liked about the defense is it always seems to be different guys stepping up as well. Because you have those defenses where, like, I think back to the Eagles last year, if Reddick didn't make a play, nobody else did.
Yeah.
Like, and you'd see obviously other teams like you got Bosa and the 49ers.
And TJ, what we always have to do this, don't we?
And you got players like, whereas it's not like that there. There's no player that, like, if that player doesn't have a good game, that defense is not going to do well, which is really good to see. But we will move on though from last week's game because new week now.
Yeah.
We are Thursday and it's Thursday night. We've got a big game going on tonight, a clash in the NFC West between the 49ers, who was most people's picks for this season to win the NFC outright, the Seattle Seahawks and Geno Smith, who just continually keeps going. And I think at this point, we can get past the point where it's Geno Smith. He's an NFL starting quarterback and good enough for that role. But we'll start off with the 49ers. What has gone wrong there this season? Super Bowl hangover?
I don't think it's just Christian McCaffrey being injured. Everybody points to that straight away, but I think it is the Super Bowl hangover, which I guess on paper you would say that the Niners would be equipped to avoid that.
Yeah.
But Brock Purdy has actually been fine.
Yeah.
It's been more what's around. Look, you can talk about Debo being banged up. I know Trent Williams got hurt again a couple of weeks ago mid-game. But I don't know if it's just, I hate to say this, I think it's a mental thing. I think it's more, I think Kyle Shanahan is a great coach, and maybe he'd be better just as an offensive coordinator. He's a great offensive mind. But when we spoke about that loss to the Rams and we were doing the review show on Monday, for me, Sean McVay, a top two coach, only behind Andy Reid. I don't think Shanahan's a bad coach, but it's those key decisions in the clutch. And when you've lost a second Super Bowl in his reign, even though it's a different group of players, you still got guys like George Kittle who were there you've got to sort of vamp them and re-energize them. And considering whatever happened with McCaffrey in the offseason and that injury and keeping that quiet, it's almost in a weird way. The season started with tempered expectations, and then now they're at a losing record. So I think tonight's a must-win for them.
I do as well. And I think that when you look at them as well, it's not like though when some teams after the Super Bowl they lose all their stars. Yeah. They lose loads of stars because they had to pay guys. They're paid guys, but kept majority of people. It's not like they've got a team of players and you're like, oh, but they've lost this, and they're majority of the guys who were here last year. Yeah. And particularly that offense that hasn't looked as slick this year.
Hey, Brandon Ayuk, he's not done much.
Well, last week he did, but the previous few games he hadn't done much at all.
Because I didn't get him in one of the fantasy leagues.
But obviously he's not. But he obviously got paid and hasn't done. And then you got to think that there's further problems further down the line, is because we're not far away from Purdy going to want to get paid.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, he's not going to be after the Dak numbers.
No.
He
still earned it.
Yeah. He's not going to want Dak numbers. He's not going to want Deshaun Watson numbers, which is obviously a bit of a joke amount. But he's going to want to get paid. And he's going to want to, you may even think Daniel Jones range, or he's going to want more than Daniel Jones.
When you make an NFC title game in the Super Bowl, you deserve it.
But how do they keep that core with that much expense?
Yeah, it's tough because you pay Ayuk, and I can't remember Debo's contract situation, but I feel like he might be next year. I don't think he has been paid. He's had injury problems. Obviously, they drafted. There's a guy's name I remember talking about in the offseason. There's a guy they drafted who hasn't played, but he's a Debo type.
Yeah.
Obviously, we know what happened with Ricky Purcell. Obviously, wish him well. But a guy again, really talented in college. I think you almost have to do that thing where you're like, who are our key players that we keep? A guy like Trent Williams, one of the best left tackles in the league, but he's aging. You've got to pick and choose your guys. McCaffrey, to have the tendonitis that he has, you probably are looking and being like, well, maybe we have to start looking at a Mason as our guy. Yeah. So you pay Purdy, and then the next draft you go, right, we might need to draft a running back. We need to draft a left tackle. The defense, they can keep that as what it is, which is a good solid unit. Yeah. But it's more maybe plugging in hold of the younger guys on the offense to build around Brock Purdy.
And because obviously you mentioned there as well, I think they were obviously quite fortunate to be able to pay as many guys as they had by having the cheapest quarterback in the NFL. Mm-hmm. Obviously that is always going to help a team to have a quarterback paid like $750,000, which don't get me wrong, I would love to get paid that in my life at this point. But NFL terms, that's pittance.
Yeah.
So I think they've been quite fortunate to have that, but it's going to get a tricky cap situation when you've got to pay him something of merit because he's earned money. And
I think he's top 10. And it could be a system thing, like, because he was Mr. Irrelevant, I feel like he gets a harsh treatment. Mm-hmm. And I know we've had ex-pros and they know better than us here.
They know slightly more.
But when they say about, him just being a system, there's so many teams in the system. You said about Geno Smith.
Yeah.
We know what happened with him on the Jets. And there were times when no one thought he'd ever be a star. And it's great to see him come into his own. Mm-hmm. And it is all about systems and it working out. And Brock Purdy and the 49ers, he's the perfect quarterback for what they want and what Kyle Shanahan wants.
But also as well, when you look at it, it's not like bear in mind, I know they've lost a few games this year. At no point can I go, do you know what, that's Brock Purdy's fault for losing these games. Like you look at the game where there was no CMC, no Debo, and yet he still played well. He still looks like, as you say, a top 10 quarterback. So it's not like Mr. Irrelevant is the reason they are losing.
Even in the Super Bowl, you had with Jalen Hurts, he gets his stick in the media now. He went toe-to-toe with Mahomes, so did Purdy. It was more one or two plays for both of those guys, not winning a wing. I was going to say a wing, got food on a ring.
That's after. And obviously, we're now going to move on to Seattle, because obviously we talked about the 49ers here. And Seattle and Geno Smith are a team that you can never count out.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I know they've had some wins against teams you're like, okay, you expect them to beat these teams. But what are you expecting from the Seahawks tonight?
I think weirdly in a way, because they just lost to the Giants, this is a perfect bounce back game for them to play a big rival. When you lose to, no disrespect to them, I know the defense has stepped up with the Giants, but I've seen that a lot of people like them, my Patriots, the Panthers, each week, the experts are picking against them. So when you get, every team's going to win in this league. But when you're a team like the Seahawks do, a week prior to that, they're going, oh, Geno's doing really well in passing stats. Smith and Jigba's getting involved. You've got the Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
And then you lose to the Giants. For them, they probably have been eager to be like, right, we want to be back on the field. And, CenturyLink tonight is going to be, the atmosphere is going to be insane. So I think Mike McDonald's doing well. Obviously, come over for the Ravens last year. The defense is playing pretty well. I just think I know I said to you off air, I picked them to win. And all week I just went on name and was like, oh, the Niners. And when I sat there this morning, I was like, well, no, the Seahawks are at home. And at the moment, they're the healthier team.
Yeah.
So I think Seattle just has to not turn the ball over. And I think that offensively, they've got enough firepower. They couldn't keep up with the Lions, but how many teams really can? So I think they've got enough about.
So obviously you mentioned both teams today. What do you think the key for the 49ers to win tonight would be? Where to we need to lock in, this is what we do to win tonight.
I think as much as we just both praise Gino in his own right, he's a quarterback. If you can get him off his rhythm, then maybe there's opportunities for turnovers.
Get him out of the pocket as well. Exactly. If he has to scramble, he's not a Lamar, is he? Don't get me wrong, there's not many that are. But I wouldn't even say he's a Jalen Hurts, which at this point, me and Jalen aren't friends right now because of the amount of turnovers he's done this season. But out the pocket, I would rather Jalen be out the pocket than in the pocket.
Exactly.
Whereas Gino, when he's out the pocket, he's not as comfy as other quarterbacks. So flush him out. Obviously, that defensive line is savage.
It's so good. And I feel like with Gino, he's a guy where we saw it they played well against the Lions, but I feel like 12 to 15 passes in a row, it could be great.
Yeah.
But if you can get one sack or get him out of the pocket, like you said, and force a turnover, he might be a guy who thinks about it on the next drive. And the 49ers are so good at almost honing in on a guy and condensing that. So, yeah, I think that's the key there is more defensively and taking the pressure off of Brock Purdy. You don't want to get into a shootout because, like we said, they've been banged up this season. And it feels weird to say that the 49ers might not be able to compete in a shootout. Because they can, but it's just not being the Niners of last season this year.
No. And obviously, we mentioned Trent Williams. And obviously, Trent Williams is such a key guy. And as an Eagles fan myself, that when we don't have Lane Johnson, I feel the exact same pain.
Yeah.
Or even Jordan Mailata to the other side. When you lose your tackles on the end, and they are so key to how that team runs. How concerned are you about the health of maybe Trent Williams? Because this is 2 seasons in a row now. He's had an injury that's kept him out for numerous weeks. Have you got any concerns about his health long term?
I think you have to when you play the most physical position in the league, like the Patriots of David Andrews.
Yeah.
He's been a stalwart for us for years. He's injured at the moment, and these guys get to a certain point in their career where you're like, okay, they've been elite for a number of years. You've seen it with Jason Kelsey.
Yeah.
I mean, we were surprised that he retired, but then you're like, hang on, this guy's been playing for that long at that level. There's a point where imagine we're choking off by us playing sports an hour day and waking up with aches and pains. These guys are playing at a professional level. So for Trent Williams, he's a typical case of if they'd won a Super Bowl, I think he would have retired. So that's obviously in his mind. So it's almost like there are concerns in the short term, but if they can get it right and get on a playoff run, he's a guy who's going to play through the pain and do that.
That's the thing, he's going to be one of those warriors. Those offensive line, all offensive line guys. I'd say with defensive line guys, they're your Trents, they're your warriors. They're the people who, no matter how much in pain they are, they're going to not come out of the play. So we mentioned obviously what the 49ers need to do to win tonight. What about Seattle? How do they beat the 49ers and go 4-2 and leave the 49ers on 2-4?
Can you imagine? I just feel like Seattle need to. I mean, I know it's picking the obvious, but I'm saying the Niners defense is the key to them winning. Seattle just need to get in their rhythm early because, like I said, it's not going to be a Lions case where would Goff go 18 for 18 and caught a touchdown from Amon-Ra. So I don't think you're going to see that tonight. So if they can get in their rhythm early and hit them early whilst the crowd is up.
Yeah.
Because as great as that atmosphere is, there are always parts in the game where maybe people nipping off the food at halftime or whatever. First quarter.
You've got food on.
Yeah, I know.
Literally, it's the third time you mentioned foods while we've been sat here. We will feed you after you've finished.
Yeah, well, Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet, they're going to feast. I feel like that's the key as well, the run game. I know I mentioned about the offense, but we know that they like to run a lot of 2 sets with the receivers. It might be DK and Tyler Lockett, or then obviously you've got, as I was saying before, with who's on my team, Smith and Jigba.
Yeah,
you've got those guys. They don't like to. I feel like the Seahawks like to show a lot of we're going to run it. And they are a run-heavy team to a degree, so the key is getting the run established early, getting up early, and I think that'll put the Niners on the back foot.
But to be fair, you are going to be a run-heavy team when you've literally got those 2 guys in the backfield. Yeah. There's not many teams who have a 1-2
and I'm happy for Charbonnet.
And obviously there's points where when they drafted him in the first place, there was a lot of people going, wait there, you draft Walker not long before that, and it just felt an odd pick at that point in time. But how much do you think that they're maybe been proven right to maybe take that?
Well, Walker got hurt, didn't he? A couple of weeks ago. Charbonnet stepped up, and there was our season where that didn't happen. But then the fact that it's happened this year, and you're kind of like, well, it makes sense that you do that because the running back committee in the league now, some teams even have 3. Your Eagles have had sort of 3 games. Boston's got 10 up against the Giants.
He only turned up against the Giants. He only played that game each year. Cheers, Andy. Always my favourite game of the year.
Every team has that luxury of having, like you guys have now with a Saquon, or we're in a position with Mondre Stevenson because there's no one else. So then there's Gibson. But an ideal sort of combination offense is to have that 1-2 punch to let a guy rest. Even the Ravens do with Derrick Henry. Justin Hill comes in. So it's been nice to see Charbonnet and Walker do their thing.
So obviously we've now talked about tonight's game, but let's move on to the reason why I've actually come to London. I've come all the way down from Liverpool,
for food,
but not just for food. But we're here for the Jags versus the Bears.
Yeah.
How much are you looking forward to this clash this weekend? I'm seeing Caleb Williams live, a guy that we know you've got a little bit of a soft spot for.
Yeah. Super excited. I mean, I'm glad the Jags won last week, not just because I picked them in our pool, and that was a point up on a lot of people went for the Colts, but it's just nice to see. I thought the Bears are a franchise who almost sort of, they've reset, they've drafted Caleb. Obviously, I'm saying to you off air that in those pressers, the young guys, that like his rapport with DJ Moore and just seems to be a feel good factor around them, and they've got the marketing rights in Spain. So they might play there next year. They've got the game in London, and everything that was said by even the guys higher up in those pressers points towards they want to be here, and that's refreshing as well. I'm not saying that no teams do want to be here, but we know that the scheduling around it is difficult. So for a franchise to be here playing a Jags team who's obviously made a big wave about establishing the NFL in the UK, it's nice to have 2 teams here who want to be here.
But I'm bearing in mind as well, the Bears have done quite a lot. We've been to a few flag events with them this year, obviously
with the Jets and
the Jets. They've done quite a few things with the Jets this year, and I think you were at one on this week as well, was it?
Oh yeah, they had the mini monsters camp with Charles Tillman. To bring even a legend in his own. Such a good player. I mean, a peanut punch is named after him. Established for a number of years. That's big as well. The Bears are actually sending people over who are recognisable.
Well, so I went to the one in Liverpool last year, and there was Sean Gale from the legendary Bears defense.
He's always got his.
Do you know what I mean? And the ring was always on show, and do you know what I mean? It's like, and they're sending over people who are actually are legends. It's not they're not just picking the guy who's on the practice squad.
It shows that they know that it's important. And they have that buy-in.
And obviously, these guys could not only talk about what it took to go on to be, they are very committed to it. I've got a lot of time for the Bears and we've done quite a bit with them at this point. So it's going to be good to see how they perform over. It's also they've also got one of the largest fan bases. Over here.
And they've got a new stadium coming, which obviously touched upon yesterday. That's a big thing for them, and it's a project that comes on once every 50 years. So they're clearly in this crossover, like, right, new stadium, new fan base. They want Hard Knocks as well. That buys into the younger viewership. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of young viewers tuning in and be like, oh my God, you've got a game in London. So,
And obviously, we talked about, you mentioned Caleb, obviously he's started to improve. How worried were you with how he started the first few weeks? So bearing in mind, I know how heavy you did trades to make sure you got Caleb in the fantasy draft this year. Like in Dynasty, for those new Dynasty, Sky went heavy to basically make sure he got Caleb. So how worried were you with how he started this year?
Yeah, it was obviously they're weak bombers against the Titans. A lot of people wrote the Titans off, and they were literally carried by the defense and the special teams. I think it was more worrying, not passing the blame, but the O-line of the Bears obviously was a lot better last week. But also, he acknowledged yesterday that it's a team game, it's about growing as a team. And, in college, he was almost a Mahomes-type magician of getting out of the pocket and making plays. We saw him trying to do that too much in the first couple of weeks.
Trying to impress too much, mate.
And especially when Jaden Daniels is doing what he's doing, I think there wasn't any hint of that from Caleb yesterday, but we know how prominent social media is now. When you see the guy who's drafted after you doing what he's doing, you probably might maybe do too much. But I think that game against the Panthers, I know it's only Carolina, but imagine if they didn't perform the way that they did, and he didn't have over 300 yards, he didn't have the 2 touchdowns, everyone would sort of go, oh, you are really being carried. So that was a game they needed. And people might say the same if we do it against Jacksonville this week. They might have the same narrative, but I think it was just nice to see he's progressed a lot in the last 5 weeks. So I'm happy for it.
And because bearing in mind as well, there was all those comparisons already in the season between Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and then you had Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. So obviously that must have been playing in his head. The fact that people were comparing that to that, and people going, particularly bearing obviously that what Carolina did to get him in the first place, whereas it was less of a thing for the Bears because they didn't basically spend their whole future on a guy who might not.
Even Justin Fields, who we haven't mentioned, they could be watching him in Pittsburgh and being like, "Well, he started well."
Yeah.
And then you always have, I think they just have to block out the noise, especially Caleb in particular. You know, there's a great guy off the field. There's a lot of stuff we're talking off there about for charity and stuff like that. And I think when you're in the spotlight as much as he is, especially at that age, I mean, I can imagine being 22 and having that much scrutiny. He's held himself well, and he just seems like a real good team. And all of these young guys seem to have that media training now, but they still show their personality, so it's nice for them to do that.
Which is good to see. And obviously, the Bears' defense obviously has been legit this season. Again, we talk about fancy. I'm quite glad that I've got. How impressed have you been with the Bears' defense this season?
I don't even want to just talk about Montez Sweat again. Like, there's no point going through so many names, but for them to acquire him and things happen there. I think there's been a lot of positive moves, and I'm happy in a way that the Bears are known for being a defensive team in a good way in terms of 85.
It was what they were known for. Yeah. We think their Super Bowl wins, 85 Bears.
Even 06, Urlacher, Tillman. You know, I asked him about the NFC title game in the snow. It's just nice to see in a way that they're stepping up. I think there was a stat I threw at Matt Eberflus yesterday. They haven't given up more than 20 points since the Lions game in December of last season, regardless of opponents. That's 9 pro teams that you've done that against. So, really impressed. And it's good they started early to take the heat off of Caleb, because now, like we said, he may be coming into his own. They've got a decent run of games coming up. And if the offense could be clicking along with how the defense is playing, then, I mean, it's probably the best division in football right now. Could have 4 teams in the playoffs.
It would be. There was points where I think there was a couple of seasons ago when it looked like all the NFC East could sneak in, which was obviously a really interesting scenario to be at. And it's a very, very tough division, and all 4 teams are strong. We'll move on to the Jags now, which the team who were basically the team that just couldn't get over the close game. They lost every game by a very, very finite margin. How important do you think it was for them to get over the line and actually win one of those close games last week?
Yeah, because I think a lot of people forget, obviously, week 1, like you said, they only lost narrowly to Miami, which at that point people were big on. There was also a thing about, the loss against the Texans. Obviously, that was very close. And we play another division. Imagine if they'd lost close again to another divisional rival. If they were coming to London at 0-5, that would be really, really painful. But I think the biggest positive I've seen for them is Tank Bigsby coming in, take some pressure off of ETN. Again, we spoke about 1-2 punches. He was a guy, classic case, another Charbonnet type, where last year people were talking him up, but maybe he needed another year to learn under the guy and then come through. So, it was big for them to win. They were 2-0 in London last year in those 2 games. So, I mean, this is the point to turn the season around, get away from the noise of the US, and they'll be hoping to leave and be 3 or 4.
Well, the Jags have always found these trips to London to almost be sometimes a bit of an escape.
Yeah.
Particularly even seasons where some of the seasons where they were not very good at all. And I apologise to Sam, who's a friend of the show, who is a massive Jags fan. That's a reminder of those times, and she's kind of gone back into those times. And obviously, wish her all good luck with what's going on with the hurricane over there, and hopefully things aren't too bad for herself and everyone over there in Florida at the moment. But even when they had those hard times, London always seemed to be their salvation. I remember when they came over a few years ago, they beat the Dolphins with a last-second field goal against Tua. Was it Spurs? Was it Spurs in that one? And there always seems to be a saving grace coming to London, away from the noise. How important do you think this is for Doug Peterson at the moment, who is obviously having a bit of struggles at the moment?
I know. I mean, I do still find it weird, not just saying Robert Saleh's, like almost, you mentioned Robert Saleh, but that was weird to get fired at that point in the season. not that would happen to Doug, but in the offseason, people forget this was probably the best offense built for Trevor Lawrence. O-line, 2 running backs, good receivers. One made a splash for Gabe Davis, and obviously he's been banged up here and there. But they made moves to be like, this is our guy. So when it's not clicked, that falls on, unfortunately, the head coach, regardless of whether you come down to is it the offense, is it the defense. So it's a big trip for him. Obviously, we know what he did with you guys win the Super Bowl.
I have a soft spot for them.
Playing quarterback in the league, he's no stranger to the adversity that goes on in the National Football League. But I think he would have had a team prepped, and like you said, they'll embrace this trip, and they'll be hoping to leave with at least 1 win.
Well, for me, I think it's if Doug doesn't leave here with 2 wins, I think it will be curtains for unfortunate. I think when you look at, I think it'd be like Robert Salah. The trip to the UK could be
a trend. I know it's not the norm.
No, and obviously you don't want to see a head coach fight, particularly somebody who I like Doug Peterson, and he was part of the reason we won the Super Bowl was because how much he was willing to just go for it. I'm not. We're not notorious for going back to other coaches, but obviously he is a coach. Obviously, wants to succeed. It could be a tough one. So, what do you think the key are for the Bears to win this week?
I think the defense, because the Jags coming off of a win against the Colts, quite simply, you want the defense to get rolling early. You want Caleb to be making those right decisions where this is the right time to scramble, this is the right time to pass in a slot. So Keenan Allen getting involved. Swift to have another big game as well. On that, obviously he did last week. And I guess for the London fans, you want Caleb and Rome Odunze to do their thing because you've got the number 1 and number 9 pick overall.
Two very early draft.
Yes, you want to see that. So I think offense is the key more so in that we don't know what the weather's going to be like. It could be splashes of rain and splashes of sun. I mean, it's the UK after all. So the offense needs to get rolling early, I think, to almost make the Jags. If the offense gets going early, I think the Jags quite simply would be like, here we go, we've already lost it. And they might have their own heads.
So for me, I think what's quite crucial for this weekend for the Jaguars, I'm going to spin it a little bit for the Jags. I think that it can't be throwing the ball. Like that defense and the quarterbacks they've got over there in Chicago are very good. They need to be running early and running hard, and then using that for the play action afterwards. I think that's going to be crucial. If the Jags get the running game and steamroll a little bit, that's their key to the victory. I think if they don't do that, I can't see them going for a game where both teams are throwing the ball, just because I think out of the two, the better defense.
They'll cause more turnovers.
Chicago. Exactly. So I think that my key for tonight is literally going to be Tank Bigsby taking the ball and literally trying to.
I'm smiling because I picked up one of my fantasies. I still don't think the Jags will win, but I hope he has a good game.
See, I think I did go for the Jags win, but then it could be just Jags in London bias a little bit, and because they always seem to turn up when in London.
They do. We both got a little bit of bias there.
I think
I've got the Caleb.
And I've also got friends who are Jags fans that always make it feel
good things of Chicago one.
So it's always that harder thing to do. We actually have received a question from Tom. Someone actually he's obviously we're in a Philly bar at this point in time, and he's basically asking how worried should I be as an Eagles fan about Jalen Daniels and the Commanders this season. How worried should we be?
I mean, the stats that he was putting up, I think he broke or tied a record by Tom Brady for like most pass completion. In your first 4 starts, it was like minimum 75 passes. There's been that many stats about him. That's all I'm forget. Obviously, he's that good. To a point where we're talking about Washington going into Baltimore and beating them. That's what people are saying. Like before the season, can you imagine them being 4-1? And saying it might be the Ravens, who are many people's picks to win the Super Bowl. I think he's a guy where we're talking about someone who's literally turned the franchise around.
It's almost giving me CJ Stroud vibes from last year. How he just came in there and like Fred was like MVP half the season. You know what I mean?
I've been saying MVP for Dan.
See, MVP was the chant that like from Fred for a while. Could we get that rookie MVP if he carries on like this? Because when you look at the other offensive QBs out there, Josh Allen's had games where he's not been quite that bad. Don't get me wrong, Lamar's been Lamar, but they've lost. And then you look at, say, for example, even Mahomes has been himself, but not to his highest standard. He's not been MVP, he's just been, if he needs to, he wins it anyway, Mahomes, which is quite Brady-esque in that point in time. And we know that they wait till the playoffs before they really turn up a notch. Could he be a rookie MVP if he carries on like this?
I think it's possible, and I think the only advantage he has over CJ Stroud is being able to run the ball in the way that he does. We know that the voters fall in love with this whole dual threat. I mean, weirdly, even Josh Allen hasn't won an MVP yet, but he's been in the conversation almost every year other than his first year in the league. So yeah, given what they're doing and maybe the narrative around no one having any expectations, I think it's possible. I think for him to do it, they would need to exceed any of our expectations. Now I'm talking maybe at least a 12-win season.
Which, when you think about it as well, I remember when they traded Dotson away, and it was like, why are you trading away your second best wide receiver? And I said at that point in time, I bet it was like we're going to go with this bunch of guys this year, and next year's the year to push on. Whereas they seem to have kind of gone, we'll just do it this year anyway. And it just seems to have been amazing to see, and obviously not amazing as an Eagles fan.
Zach Ertz renaissance as well.
Yeah. I'm always going to have a soft spot for Zach Ertz.
And Eckler, sorry, just a guy, I know we're talking about Jaden Daniels, but Austin Eckler, a guy who's been wrote off almost as an aging running back. He's been the perfect sort of, 1-2 punch with Robinson and doing his thing.
And you look at Scary Terry as well, who has literally now he's got actual QB with him. How good he's looked as well. Honestly, it's been amazing to see it. But obviously, that is us for this week. But at this point, I think I need to feed him because otherwise he might get.
I think I've got a 5 count in my head.
He's very hungry at this point. But obviously, make sure game weekend when you are here in London, Passyunk Avenue is the place to be. Cheesesteak here is literally elite. So obviously, thank them very much for hosting us here for the franchise tag. We do truly appreciate it. Obviously, we'll be back again very soon with more content. We've already mentioned obviously Sky's interview, which will be coming out fairly soon, and all the other content we'll have over the next few days. So keep in touch with Franchise Tag, and obviously make sure you come here to eat at Passyunk Avenue. And we'll be back again soon, and we're out.